ვფიქრობ, რომ ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანია. დღეს მინდა წარმოვიდგინოთ ბატონი ვალენტინ ბოგოროვი, რომელიც გახლავთ სამეცნიერო-საგანმანათლებლო კვლევების განყოფილების თანამშრომელი და ეს თავაზობს სემინარს, რომელიც ვთვლი, რომ ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი და საინტერესო იქნება დაინტერესებული ადამიანებისთვის, მათთვის, ვისაც სურვილი აქვს, რომ მათი კვლევა იყოს ხარისხიანი და გამოიყენონ უახლესი და საინტერესო ინფორმაცია ამ ყველაფრისთვის. პირველ რიგში მოვისმენთ სემინარს, ბატონი ბოგოროვის პირდაპირ იქნება უფრო მეტი პრაქტიკული ნაწილი ვიდრე თეორიული და ამ შემდეგ გვექნება კითხვების დროც და ნებისმიერ თქვენგან შეუძლიათ დასვას თქვენთვის საინტერესო შეკითხვა. თუ ყველაფერი მზად არის, პრინციპში შეგვიძლია დავიწყოთ. მისი
Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a great pleasure for me to have a chance to be here today and to talk at Ilia State University. For me, it's, for all practical purposes, really my first time in Tbilisi. I was here once a very long time ago as a student, so I have very pleasant memories of that. And it's a particular pleasure for me because I can talk to you about the web of science and the complex of related information resources. And I know that your university is one of the pioneers in Georgia in this field, so I hope that this information can be useful to you. I have a fairly short presentation. I hope that I will not bore you too much with it. And then for most of the seminar, I actually want to show you how to work with web of science and with other information tools. So I will do the practical demonstration, so I hope that then you will be able to do the same thing on your own. So first, one slide on history. Web of Science is the largest and the oldest universal referentive database of academic publications in the world. The last year, in 2014, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Web of Science. The story of the Web of Science began even earlier than that. It began really in 1955 when a young American scholar, Eugene Garfield, published an article in the Science Journal, one of the best-known international academic publications. And in this article, he suggested the idea to create a universal global database of scholarly publications. And that database would not only include the publications, but would also include all citation information as well. The article by Dr. Garfield became very popular. In fact, it's still cited quite often. However, no one wanted to take up that project because the project was too big to realize. Then Garfield took to business himself. In 1957, he created the Institute for Scientific Information, ISI. And the Institute of Scientific Information in 1964 published the first edition of Science Citation Index. That Science Citation Index that was published in 1964 became the predecessor of the Web of Science as we know it today. By the way, I want to ask you to pay attention to those three letters, the short abbreviation ISI, because it's still widely used today. You can often see references to academic journals referenced by ISI, or you can see references to the ISI databases. That is not surprising because really the ISI became the place that generated where really the modern psychometric was born. Most of the modern psychometric indices, which are widely used today, were developed at ISI back in the 1960s and 70s. So there is no surprise that the name of ISI is still very popular and carries great authority. But we need to know that there is no more ISI as an independent organization. In 1992, the Institute for Scientific Information became the part of the Thomson Scientific Company, which is now the part of the huge international information company, Thomson Reuters. And I'm here representing the Thomson Reuters. But the team that developed with Dr. Garfield the Science Citation Index and other information tool, that team still works and continues its work now within Thomson Reuters. And the current name Web of Science was created in 1997. In 1997, several scientific indexes, including the Science Citation Index, were put together and were called the Web of Science. Now let me say you a few words about the methodological principles the Web of Science is based on. The first principle is the full capture of all citation data for all publications that are being indexed in the Web of Science. The database has a unique depth of the archive. The full depth of the archive spans more than 100 years. You can find journals here which are indexed from 1898. That's the oldest. So really we have here the data on more than a century of scientific publications and citations. And for all the publications that are indexed in the Web of Science, all citation information will be captured. So all references will be captured and contained in the database. That allowed us to accumulate an enormous amount of information of citation data. I want to give you two numbers today. The Web of Science contains the records of over 59 million scholarly publications, and it has over 1 billion of citations in it. That 1 billion of citations is that huge volume of citation data that I'm referring to. That amount of information on citations in Web of Science allows us to use it in two different ways. First way in which we can use Web of Science is for information discovery. Because we have information on citation data, we can find clusters of related publications. We can see the evolution of certain scholarly concepts and ideas. We can see interaction between various scholars and interaction between various academic schools. We can see and analyze patterns of interactions between various universities. So that's the information discovery part, and I will show you today how we can use the Web of Science as a tool for information discovery. The second way in which Web of Science is used today is for research evaluation and research performance benchmarking. Because citations reflects the demand for the publication. Citations reflects what kind of an impact a certain publication made on scholarly community in general. Because of that, we can use citations as a proxy for the academic success. And there are various indices calculated on the basis of information in the Web of Science, which are being used for evaluation of individual scholars, which are being used for evaluation of academic journals. For instance, many of you have possibly heard the word impact factor. Impact factor is the major indicator used for evaluation of academic journals. Impact factor data are calculated on the basis of citations in the Web of Science. Another example how we can use this data for evaluation is university ratings. If you look at any international university ratings, you will see that a very significant part of that rating, usually between a quarter and a half of the rating, consists analysis of the data on publications and citations. And for many ratings, this data is derived from the Web of Science. The second principle on which the Web of Science is based is selection of the best, the most influential publications for indexing. As of today, there are three main sources of information in the Web of Science. It's academic journals, proceedings of academic conferences, and scholarly monographs. Of those three types of sources, the journals really make the core of the Web of Science. As the journals today is the major way that information is communicated in science. It's the predominant channel of academic communication. Now, if we look at the journals, there are over 100,000 of various academic journals in the world. It's hard to come up with an exact number. I tried, and it's hard to do because it really depends on the criteria, on how we define what an academic journal is. There are various, very different criteria how we can define an academic journal. But whichever set of criteria we take, we come up with a huge number, way over 100,000. Now, of that huge number of international academic journals, approximately 12,500 have been selected to be indexed in the Web of Science. And the exact name of the database where they indexed is the Web of Science Core Collection. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So again, the idea of the Web of Science is not to cover every single publication. The idea is to apply very rigorous criteria for journal selection and to select the best and the most influential publication. One more detail that I need to mention is the fact that Thomson Reuters as a company is not a publisher of the journals itself. The question that I'm being asked very often is, could we please submit our article to one of your scholarly magazines? Unfortunately, this is a question to which I cannot answer yes, because we don't have any journals of our own. It's a position of principle. It was laid out by Dr. Garfield many years ago. The reason for that is because we select the journals. Our editorial committee evaluates the journals for indexing. If we had published some journals of our own, we would have a very clear conflict of interest. It would be unethical for us to publish journals and to evaluate them at the same time. There are some other publishers which do that, and we don't believe that it's a correct approach. All the journals are selected for the inclusion in the Web of Science Core Collection by our international editorial board. This is a single board that evaluates academic journals from all the countries, from all around the world. It's located in Philadelphia, in the United States. Why in Philadelphia? Because that's where Dr. Bogorov founded his Institute for Scientific Information. So we continue the traditions of that institute. All journals are evaluated on 4 groups of criteria. The first group of criteria can be generally called publishing standards. What it includes? It includes fairly prosaic things such as the regularity of publications of the journal. It includes, perhaps a much more important thing, as having a rigorous peer review for the articles. Unfortunately, many journals still don't have that, and we believe that this is really a cornerstone for a quality academic publication, is a rigorous peer review. So it's one of the necessary conditions for the journal to be indexed in the Web of Science is practicing a vigorous peer review. It's also having all information on the publications in English. Now, I want to make the distinction here. The majority of the journals which are indexed in the Web of Science are journals published in English. However, we also index the most influential, the most authoritative journals published in other languages. We have a certain number of journals published in German, in French, in Russian, in Spanish, in other major languages. However, for a journal to be indexed, we require that it would provide full bibliographic information in English, including not just the names, the titles of the articles, but also the abstracts, list of keywords, and so on. So the text of the article itself can be, for instance, in German, but there should be full bibliographic information in English. Second group of criteria is the content. Our editorial board carries out the expert evaluation of the journal content. I can say here that a certain priority is given to the journals which cover new areas of research, which have not been covered in the Web of Science yet. Because the idea behind the Web of Science is that it's truly global, universal scholarly database. So it covers all various directions, all the new approaches in science. So if we have a new area, let's say nanotechnologies, and there are some influential academic journals in that area that will get certain priority to be included in the database. The next group of criteria is the international reach. Because the base from the beginning was conceived as the base that will cover the global science. Today, at least in the natural sciences, we can't really talk about the existence of separate German mathematics or Russian mathematics or Chinese mathematics. There is really one global mathematics. So we look for the journals which influence goes beyond the boundary of one single country, which we look at the journals which influence the whole global research landscape. So we look at the composition of the authors and composition of editorial boards, and we select only the journals whose influence reaches beyond one single country, the place of their publication. And finally, the last group of criteria is the citation analysis. We use our data, the Web of Science data, to see to what extent a certain journal already acquired a following in the international academic community. If the journal is cited, and if it's cited by researchers from many countries, then it's a good candidate for the Web of Science. If citation is minimal, then the journal still has a way to go in its development. So this is how the journal evaluation is being carried out. And indexing is free for all the journals. We never charge a journal for either evaluation or indexing. Now let me confuse you a little bit, or rather I'd say untangle a certain confusion, and add a bit more of our terminology. Our core database, which was created as a Science Citation Index, then it was for a long time called simply the Web of Science. Now it's called the Web of Science Core Collection. In my presentation today, I will often refer to it simply to the Web of Science, just so I don't have to repeat all those full words. Web of Science Core Collection. But really the full name of the database is now the Web of Science Core Collection. That database is located on the information platform called the Web of Science. That platform also comprises about 15 different databases. Maybe you heard about some of them. Most of them are specialized databases. For instance, there is a database, Durban Innovations Index. That's the largest referentive database on patents in the world. It contains referentive information about over 53 million patents. There is a zoological record, as you can see from its name. That's a database on zoology. It has a unique depth of the archive. It indexes academic publications since 1864. So that's almost a century and a half of information on zoology. There is a database called INSPEC. That's a huge database on physics and electrical technology, and so on and so forth. So very specialized databases. The newest addition to the Web of Science platform is what we call original citation indexes. We acknowledge that there are large areas of the world, large regions, where we have sources of academic publications, academic journals, that don't really have the international impact, they don't have the global impact yet, but which are important for that specific region. Particularly that concerns the journals in the regional languages. So we acknowledge that, and we now developed a new tool called regional citation indices. In 2009, we launched the first index like that, the Chinese citation index. It was launched in partnership with the Chinese Academy of Sciences. It was followed by CL citation index. CL citation index is an index of scholarly publications in Spanish and Portuguese. It's produced in Brazil by a Brazilian non-profit foundation on development of science. Last year, we developed Korean citation index. That's a database on Korean citation journals. And currently, actually, the index which is being developed right now is the Russian citation index, which will probably be launched in the beginning of the next year. And it will cover the most influential scholarly publications from Russia and CIS countries. So it will be designed mostly for the journals in the Russian language. That will be followed by a couple of other regional indices. They are a bit too early, so I will not name them, each of them, but probably there will be also an index developed for the Middle Eastern countries, for the publications in Arabic, and maybe several other regional databases. However, so I just want you to know all of that. However, when we talk about various international research benchmarking, we talk about this big orange circle in the middle of the slide. So if we talk about, say, international university ratings, they use just the data from the Web of Science core collection, from our main database. And now the reason why you should know about this is because I encountered in my practice that some academic journals do what I would say they have some not very ethical practices in dealing with authors. An author asks the journal, are you in the Web of Science? And the journal editor says yes. And that yes could be that certain articles of the journal are indexed, for instance, in the InSpec database, or somewhere in the original citation database, say in CL citation database. An author submits his article, hoping that his article will get in the Web of Science. Well, in fact, the journal is not indexed in the main database, so when then the numbers are calculated, that article will not be used for calculating the scientific numbers for that author and for his institution. Also, many of these databases located on a platform do not have citation information at all. They're just a recordative database on publications, but they do not have information on citations. And before the last year, the name of the core base was the Web of Science, and the name of the platform was the Web of Knowledge. I want to show you this, so you will be aware of that. I see there's a question.
One question. But it can be vice versa, that the journal from, for instance, Medline can be included in the Web of Science core collection, yes?
Yes, absolutely. Those are really independent databases, and in fact, many of those databases are produced by independent producers. Let's say the Medline is a great database, is a fantastic database. It's produced by the National Medical Library in the United States. But we don't produce it, we just have partnership agreement with them. So they asked us to put it on the Web of Science platform. We do that, but we don't control its content. So they have very different methods for selecting publications. For instance, in the Medline, they don't index journal from cover to cover. They just select certain articles from the journal, which they believe are the key articles, and they index them. And there is no citation data in the Medline. So it's just a reference database. Unfortunately, you can't calculate any centimetric indices on the basis of the Medline, simply because it doesn't have any citation data. But yes, many of these databases overlap.
If I may, first of all, thank you for this interesting information. But just to get back to a concept you have just presented to us regarding this a little bit complicated hierarchy of the assessment of the databases. As I comprehend it, there is a so-called nuclear zone, core zone in the platform, and belonging to this zone means that you are recognized. I mean the journals, I mean all that. And the rest that is on the periphery. What the purpose for that? Was it just for the business reasons of the Thomson Reuters? Because as I understand, it does not give an extra let's say respect to those who are trying to publish there. What's the real rationale behind?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, it's a relevant one. I would say there are two reasons. First reason is an information discovery. Let's say if you are a medical doctor and you are looking for an information on certain type of disease, you may look in the core, in the Web of Science core collection, and you'll see there the articles from the most influential journals on the subject and the most cited articles. But sometimes you're in a situation when you want to see the broadest coverage. You want to see all publications. You want to see maybe some publications from pretty obscure small journals, maybe from some little obscure journal in Africa that you would be interested in. Now, you will not find that journal in the core, but you may find articles from that journal in the Medline, for instance. That's the first part of the answer. The second part of the answer, when we talk about using the database for research performance benchmarking, actually the reason why we created the Chinese citation database was because we were getting lots of requests from China. And China is a place where we have now enormous explosion of scholarly growth. It's really incredible what's going on in China right now. They have enormous explosion of the number of publications, the number of patents, pretty much of everything. Of everything, yes, it's really fantastic. So the Chinese science administrators asked us to create a special database on the Chinese publications because they say that they want two levels of assessment. The first level of assessment on the level of the most influential international journals, but they also want a regional level of assessment. And our goal is to try to provide to the world a flexible set of tools. So we are evolving. I would say 20 years ago it was just one Web of Science, and that was it. Now science is becoming much more international. There are new centers of growth in science, let's say like China or like Latin America, and we try to take that into account. So we try to evolve with the world in this sense. But I want to say that for the practical reasons, I just want you to make aware of this, but probably doesn't make a big difference to most present here. And then for the rest of the day today, I want to talk about the core collection and how to work with it.
So it means that if we try to identify the major trends within our research stream or the sphere, this is this core zone where we have to focus.
That's what I would suggest.
But the rest is just related to geographical spread of the research activities.
I would say the rest should be used for certain special purposes.
Yeah.
Like, as I mentioned, if you study a certain medical disease, then you would be possibly interested in going to the Medline. if you are interested in the Chinese science, you probably will be interested in going to the Chinese citation database. But for what you mentioned, if you want to analyze where the world science is going, what the global research landscape is today, that's what the major database is created for, the nucleus. For those who are interested in the subject, I'm not going to dwell long on that, but in bibliometrics, there is something called the Bradford Law. Samuel Bradford was a British mathematician and a director of the Library of the British Museum. And I think librarians, that he had a problem that resonates with librarians because he ran out of the shelf space in the Library of the British Museum. So, he didn't run out of money, but he ran out of shelf space. You know, we can be envious to that kind of problem.
Running out of shelf space, you mean this idiom?
Running out basically the size of the...
Not find the place on the shelf, right?
Right, not finding the place where to put more journals. So he started, he needed to come up with certain criteria, which journals to continue to subscribe and which journals to discontinue. So he started doing citation analysis. And when he started doing citation analysis, he realized that there is, in each academic discipline, there is a relatively small nucleus of journals, which gets most of citations. And then there is a large periphery, which is almost never cited. I don't know if there are economists in this room, but the economists know the so-called Pareto principle, or the 80-20 principle. So you can think of the Bradford Law and the Pareto principle as applied to academic literature, that 20% of the journals generate 80% of citations. On the academic world, it's even a bit more extreme. It's more like 10% of the journals generate about 90% of the citations. Again, if you are interested in the subject, then just Google the Bradford Law. And when Eugene Garfield started building his science citation index, he drew heavily on Bradford's work and on Bradford Law. So that's the explanation why we care about the nucleus, because this nucleus really gives us the indicator of an academic quality, and also it gives us the sense of where the global science is going.
Sorry for the interruption, but I also wanted to ask something about this. My first question is identical to Dimitri, so thank you for the answer. And my second question is, you mentioned 4 criteria to get admitted as requirement. And if, for example, a journal does not have the 4th one, like the citation analysis, if we don't have journals that cited our journal, in that case, for example, we can start to be admitted in the peripheral zone, and afterwards, is there any possibility to get admitted in the core, or to transfer the journal once it is developed?
I think it's a very good strategy. I think it really is a very good strategy, because if the journal is indexed in any of those databases, it means that the journal is really visible to a fairly broad international community. Today, if we talk about the Web of Science platform in general, we have subscribers in more than 120 countries around the world, and we have over 20 million unique visitors to the platform. So if the journal is present, not even in the core collection, but somewhere else, it also increases the visibility of the journal.
For the regional peripheral journals, citation analysis is not a requirement.
It depends. It depends on the specific database. It's hard to give a blanket answer. Here we need to go database by database, because again, those databases are quite different, one from another.
Thank you.
There is one more question on the back, and then probably I will go to actually working with the system, because otherwise, unfortunately, we'll run out of time.
Just a quick question. Well, you have Russian, Korean. There are countries like Georgia, small countries making big differences in science, and plenty of people writing in Georgian. which is important for Georgians. Is there a way you integrate this sort of knowledge in your systems? Or maybe that was the question asked previously, if I misheard it, but my point is that, well, you might get an article in English that you will cite as a useful article, but the basis of that article is plenty of work in local language, Georgian, which you will miss from the database because of the language issue.
Well, thank you. It's a good question, and it's a valid question. And I think as an academic community of a relatively small country, you have a certain disadvantage, but you also have a certain advantage. The disadvantage, obvious, is that probably there will never be a special Georgian citation index. Again, we create those indices not even for the countries. We create them for a big parts of the world. For instance, there will probably be no Russian citation index, if not for the fact that Russian is used by the language of communication not in Russia, but in many other countries around it.
Less and less.
Well, not less, but still. I mean, when we run the number of journals, it was still quite substantial. Same applies to many other languages. Let's say there will never be an Egyptian citation index, but quite possibly there will be the Arab citation index. Now, what is the advantage? What we see is that the scholars from a relatively small academic communities have big incentive to go for the big international global journals, and often have big success with them. One of our success stories in the world of science is Turkey. If you look at the dynamic of the Turkish publications, you will see that Turkey really skyrocketed in the world of science. See, when people think about the publication success, people always think about China or South Korea. And those are very obvious cases, but there are other cases, again, Turkey. So you don't have to follow the Chinese route, but you can follow the Turkish route. Malaysia, another success. Recently, we have a big rise of publication from many Arab countries, such as Saudi Arabia, Latin American countries. Brazil is a very successful story. So, and I wanted to mention, perhaps, if we are talking about the small countries, the best example I have in my mind is Singapore. No, it's a very small country, and if you look at the publication numbers for Singapore in the Web of Science, you'll see that they have blossomed. And one of the reasons for that is because, being a small country, they publish in the major global journals. There probably aren't that many local Singaporean journals, so they go straight for the best. In fact, when we work in large countries, such as Russia and Kazakhstan, that's what we tell to the scholars there. Look, forget about the Russian and Kazakh journals. Try to go to the best international journals. Because if you want to be a part of the top of the global science, you need to publish there, not in the local journals. So again, it's a situation where you have disadvantage and an advantage. So now let me move actually to working with the web of science itself. Because I understand we are quite limited with time. I appreciate that so many people came so late in the day. Let me just ask, how many of you have already worked with the web of science?
I've just checked for
Okay.
Just checking.
Okay. All right. So I'll start from the basics. Your university has a subscription, and because it has a subscription, then from any university computer, you should get the access to the Web of Science simply by typing webofscience.com, because subscription is provided by the IP addresses. So here, if you type this line in the browser, webofscience.com, then you should get in. If not, then please report to the library and then report to us, and we'll try to fix the problem. Once you get in the Web of Science platform, this is the screen you will see. That's the first working screen for the Web of Science. here I want to draw your attention to three details. First, please see that you can see my name in the upper right corner of the platform. That means that I work in my personal profile. Now, creation of your personal profile has nothing to do with access to the database. Again, you have access because the university has a subscription. But any user can create his or her own profile on the database. Creation of the profile is fairly simple. I'm already in my profile, but if I would be in the profile, then you will see the sign in, and then there is a brief registration form. If you fill out this form, then you create your own profile. When you will be creating the form, please pay attention to the password requirement. There are pretty stringent password requirements there. Password needs to consist of 8 symbols, at least one letter, at least one number, and one alphanumeric symbol, such as exclamation mark or dot or something like that. The second thing is here's a list of the databases which you have currently access to. You have the access to the major database, the Web of Science core collection. That's one I already told you about. And then you have two additional databases, the original databases, which have been created recently, and now we offer access to them to any of our subscribers. That's a Korean database and Seattle database, that's a Latin American database. And I would imagine that unless you have some very specific interest in those countries, most likely you will not need those databases for your work. So I would suggest them to go straight to the Web of Science core collection. So please don't forget doing this, because in the core collection you will have a much better set of tools of working with information than on the platform as a whole. So I would suggest that when you start work, you go straight to the Web of Science core collection. And then finally, at the bottom of the screen, please pay attention to those years, because these are the years you currently have the access to the information from. All institutions have different subscriptions. The depth of the archive depends on conditions of subscription. So now your university has archives starting from year 2006. Okay, now we can do some searches to see how the database works. I want to tell you right away that there are several ways how we can search the Web of Science. Here is a little menu with various types of searches. There are 4. Actually, on full configuration of the database, there are more than that. But here you have 4 different ways of searching the database. And today we will work with just one of them, with a basic search. Here we have the search window, where we can type the terms for our search. And on the right, we have the list of various information fields where we can carry out our search. I want to draw your attention to this because this is one of the biggest differences between searching the Web of Science and searching the internet, for example. The difference is that in the Web of Science, all information is classified by certain information fields. If we look at the topic field contains the information from publication names, from the abstracts, and from the keywords. When we search for information on a certain topic, then we usually use the topic field. The next field is the title. Title is publication names. Then the field author is obviously publication authors. Among Among other important fields, I want to show you publication name. Publication name is name of the journal. If we look for a certain journal, then we need to look under the publication name. The year published, obviously, it's a year when an article is published. And then finally, a very important field is address. Address is not even so much the physical address of an author, although it can be contained in this field as well. But it's first of all author's affiliation, or the place where the authors work. Why this field is important is because when later we compile the data on research activity by a certain university, we get this data from the address field. So this is a very important field for information search. Now, you may wonder what happens if you want to search simultaneously for information in different fields. We can do that because we have here the button add another field. And for a simple search, we can add up to 50 fields like this. And they can be tied with by the Boolean operators, basic logical operators and, or not. So in the first search, I can search for certain terms using the field topic. In the second search window, I can use author. In the third, publication name, the year published, and so on. So in this way, we can create a very long and complex searches. And then if you want to start anew, there is a reset button. Now, there are two basic strategies of searching the information in the web of science. We can create a very specific, very detailed search, just how I showed you a few minutes ago. Or we can start with a fairly basic search, and then we can use instruments in the web of science to focus and narrow down our search. And usually the second approach is more fruitful. So I want to show you an example of that search. Let me start with a very basic term, with the term energy. And please notice that I'm using the field topic. So I'm searching for the information in publication titles, list of keywords, and abstracts. So we did the search, and as you can see, we have found almost 1 million titles, almost 1 million publications. Even despite the fact that you currently have access just to a limited archive, still we've got almost 1 million publications. Now, obviously that's a huge number, and it's absolutely impractical to work with such volume of publications. So what we can do now? On the left side of the search window, we have a special panel called Refine Results. With this panel, we now can narrow down and refine our search. Let's suppose that we are interested not just in all publications on energy, but specifically in publications on solar energy. Let's suppose we are interested in alternative sources of energy. Let me type here additional term solar. So as you can see, we just narrowed down the number for our search results to approximately 50,000, down from 1 million. Those are the publications which have either energy or solar in their names, in their abstracts, or in the lists of keywords. Now we have a couple of other categories here, a couple of other filters really. And with those filters, we can analyze the results we've got. First, let's see to what academic disciplines the results of our search belong. To find that out, I will use the first filter, Web of Science categories. various academic disciplines. As you can see, sometimes you get some pretty unusual results here. For instance, we have found 50 articles on microbiology, 49 articles on urban study, 44 articles on mineralogy, and so on. And here, using marking the fields, we can select the disciplines we are interested in. So if you don't want articles on microbiology, you can reject them. You can select just the academic discipline you work in. So if we're interested in solar energy as alternative source of energy, let's select energy fuels. Let me, for example, select something else, say environmental sciences, just for an example. So you mark the fields you are interested in, and then you can press the refine button. So now we've limited the result of our search just to publications into fields. Fuel, energy, and environmental sciences. Now, we can analyze what kind of publications we've got. The main type of publication is a research article. Also, a big role in Web of Science is played by proceeding papers. Proceeding papers are conference materials. So if you're looking specifically for the conference materials, you can just select here proceeding papers. And then we have a special type of materials called review. Review are the articles which, as follows from the name, provide a review of a certain field. Any article that has more than 100 sources is automatically classified as a review. So if you want to have a brief review of certain discipline, you can just look for the review articles. So in this way, we can use the panel, the refined results panel, to narrow down our search. For instance, we can look at the publication year, filter, and we can leave in the results of our search just publications from a certain year, and so on. A couple of other things I wanted to show you here. We can use the refined results panel not just to focus our search, but also for analytical purposes. For instance, we can ask the questions: what are the most published authors in work on these topics? So we can go to the filter authors, and you can see now there are 5 authors. One of them has published already over 100 papers. And mind you, we are talking just about publications since year 2006. Quite an impressive achievement. We can go to the source title filter, and we can see in what academic publications the papers on the subject are published the most often. This can be of great practical interest because we're often being asked, please advise us in which of the Web of Science journal we should publish our articles. The request I got the most recently was on children's musicology. Now, unfortunately, I have to tell you, I have no clue what are the world's leading journals on children's musicology. However, any user of the Web of Science can find it herself or himself. The only thing you need to do is you need to go to the search. You need to enter certain keywords on children's musicology, for example, and then you need to look here in the source titles, and you'll find out the most relevant journals to your field. Well, here is no surprise that actually the most relevant is the journal called Solar Energy, and then we have a couple of other publications on renewable energy. Now, I want to show you one more filter that very few people are aware of, and this is a filter that is often very useful and also has great practical significance. That's the filter funding agencies. You probably know that today, when certain organizations give grants for academic research, they require the researchers then to mention in publications the source of the research money. We also index that, and there is a special information field in the Web of Science which captures all that data. So here you can see the sources of funding for the research which satisfy our search criteria, sources of funding which are mentioned in publications the most often. Actually, it's quite interesting for the analytics because you can see here that source number 1 is the National Science Foundation of China. Source number 2, I don't know what this is. Source number 3 is the National Science Foundation from the United States. Now, on the 4th place is a source from China again. And on the 5th place is the Commission of the European Community. This is actually, you just asked about the analysis of global research landscape. Using this functionality, you can also analyze the scientific policies of various countries. And you can compare various countries one to another. For instance, now we are looking for the information on solar energy. You can find out which countries invest the most in research on solar energy. So I'm not going to show it now, but I did some research for European countries, and you can put together a list of the European countries for whom this topic is clearly a priority. It's interesting, it's important for analytical purposes. It also can be practically very useful because it can be useful in your own research when you're looking for funding sources. You can see which organizations are the most likely to find certain kinds of projects. So this is how we can use the refined results function. Now let me go back to the full list of our search results. So here we have about 12,000 articles. What we can do with them? First of all, we can sort them. Right now they're sorted by date. And by the way, don't be surprised that the most recent article is dated by July of this year. That is not a mistake. I've already seen some articles dated by November. Those are, again, it's not a mistake. These are the articles that have been already submitted to the journals, signed by the editor, and editors send this information to the Web of Science.
Accepted for publication.
Yes, they have been already accepted for publications, and not even just accepted for publications. That means that those issues of the journals have been already signed for publications in full, and then submitted to the Web of Science. So with Web of Science, we can travel in the past for quite a long time, but we can also a little bit get some insight in the future. Now, the most popular way of sorting publications in the Web of Science is to sort publications by number of citations. This way, we can find the most influential articles. We can find the articles which have received the most interest from other scholars, which have received real global impact. Here, as you can notice, there are several articles which have been cited over 1,000 times in the Web of Science. That's enormous amount of citations, because I want to remind you that we are talking not about citations in general, we are talking about citations in the most authoritative world journals. I would say that having any number of citations in the Web of Science is very good. Having dozens of citations usually is very, very good. Having hundreds of thousands of citations is really something out of this world. So, and here you can see there are some articles with several hundreds of citations, and if you work in this field, of course, it could be of interest to you to get acquainted with these articles, try to understand why those articles became so popular in the academic community. Let me go now to the record of the articles. which has probably already become clear, and if it's not clear, then let me say it clear and loud now. There are no full texts of publications in the Web of Science. This is a reference database. And unfortunately, by its design, there can be no full text in the database. Why? Because, as I mentioned, this is a universal database which covers all world's best scholarly journals. Now, in order to have full texts, we would have to have the intellectual property rights to all leading world journals. Even Thomson Reuters doesn't have that kind of financial power to buy. So you need effectively to buy the content of all world's leading academic journals. So here, and in a similar database, there are a couple of similar databases, you will not find full publication texts. But there are a couple of ways in which you can locate the publication full texts. First, you can see here there are two buttons. One button is full text from publisher. And if you click this button, you will go directly to the journal's website. In case if the journal is an open access journal, then you will be able to get the full text of the article. Why I mention that? Because currently we have a very rapid growth of open access journals in the world in general and in the world of science in particular. Somewhere between 10 and 15% of all the journals in the web of science are now open access journals. Unfortunately, that number varies in various fields. In medicine, in life science, we have the largest concentration of open access journals. And unfortunately, the lowest in the social disciplines and the humanities. So it varies from field to field. However, if the journal you're not looking for is, not an open access journal, you can also use the full text button. Now let me ask you, does any of you know this little sign which we have here? Not everyone. You're a good audience if everyone in this room knows it, because many people still don't know that. Yes, you're absolutely right. This is a badge, a Google Scholar badge. Why is it here? Because last year, Thomson Reuters signed a strategic partnership agreement with Google. Thomson Reuters is the world leader in professional information databases. Google probably doesn't need introduction. So over the next few years, there will be a certain integration between the instruments of Thomson Reuters and the instruments of Google. And one of the first signs of this integration, you can see here the Google Scholar button. And what it does, without leaving the Web of Science, you can search for the full text of the publication using Google Scholar. If this publication exists somewhere on the internet, then it will find it. And quite often the publications are on the internet because you probably know that the authors have the right to put the preprints of their articles on the internet. Basically, to use freely the preprints of their works. Kind of a loophole, publishers don't like it, but thanks to that loophole, you can usually find full texts of many publications. Now, what else we have here? We have here the abstract. And as I already told you, the article itself does not necessarily have to be in English. The article we're looking at could be in Spanish or German. However, the Web of Science requirement is for all articles to produce abstracts in English. Then, we can find here the journal information. This is fairly important because you can see, with the help of this information, you can see the level of the journal. The information on the journals contained in the special database called journal citation reports. And my understanding is that journal citation reports is also, is also in your access. And actually there is one technical issue, because if you have it in your access, there should be the impact factor number here, and maybe we can talk later about that. So we can get here right away the information on the academic journal. Then we can get authors' affiliations, the places where the authors work. Now let me get to the information which you can see here in the right part of the screen. First of all, it's the information on citation. This specific article has been cited over 1,100 times. And please notice that this is not just a number, it's a link. If I press this link, then I will see all the articles that cited that publication. This way, if you are interested in a certain cluster of articles, then you can follow those citation links from one article to another. Now, same thing goes for bibliography. So you can also analyze all the references which are contained in the specific article. Two more functions here. One function is citation map. I will not show it to you in full because it will take a certain time. I'm looking at the watch and realizing we don't have that much time left. So you have to take my word for it. With this function, you can visualize all the citations, and you will see the kind of spread of the citations. You will see they are mapped by colorful cards. The only thing is, in order to create the map, we need to have the latest Java plugin installed on the computer. Right, see here, this plugin is not supported, but if you want to visualize all the citations, you can do that. You need to install Java and then use the citation map function. Next function is very simple and very useful. It's a citation alert. If you have, let's say, your articles indexed in the Web of Science, then let me just go back and enter my profile. If you have your own articles indexed in the Web of Science, and you put a citation alert on them, then every time anyone in the world cites your articles, you'll get a notification by the email. Authors like using it, obviously, but you can put citation alert on any publication. You can put citation alert on publications by your colleagues, by your advisors, by your graduate students, whatever, or simply by anyone else whose work you are following. And you can see how the publications are being cited. Okay, now for some reason I got thrown out of the results of my search. Let me do just a quick information search again. So this is the first alert that you can use is the citation alert. And in order for it to work, you need to work in your profile. Yeah, now somehow I got exited from my profile. I don't want to spend my time to get back in it. Just want to show you this function. This little blue bell, that's a citation alert. Then there is one more function. That's search history. anytime you search any information in Web of Science, the search is recorded. Right now I have just one search, but sometimes when you work with database, then you can produce dozens of searches. So you can always return to any of them. In order to do that, you need to go to the search function button. One more thing about the search history. There is a button here, Save History. Now again, if you work in your profile, you can not only save your search history, but you can also put a new publication alerts. So anytime when there are new publications that enter the database that satisfy the criteria of research, you get notified about those publications. This is a great way to monitor the literature on certain topics. And you can put as many of those new publication alerts as you would like. So let's say if you are interested in alternative energy, you can put one new publication alert on solar energy, one publication alert on wind energy, so on and so forth. So it's a great way to monitor academic literature. Okay, this is how we can do thematical search in Web of Science. Let me ask you if there are any questions.
These you just have shown us how to find the example of solar energy. It has become clear how to find the institutions that are engaged within the financing or whatever. But my question is, could we do the same to subtopics related with the key topic of solar energy? I mean, to identify what are the subtopics under this wider research stream, which is energy or solar energy, in order to make the identification?
Absolutely. What kind of subtopics do you have in mind? Just giving an
Well,
example.
let's take an example of corruption, for example. And what are the main substreams for corruption? What are those spheres the researchers focus most of all under the umbrella of the corruption? If we could do it by using this device.
Yes, we can do that. Let me just go back and again try to enter my profile. For some reason, maybe it has something to do with security settings on the computer. Okay, we'll do now, I hope I'll get back in the system, in my working profile, and we'll do now the quick search and corruption. Okay, so we found over 6,000 publications on corruption, and then first thing I would suggest to do is to look at the distribution of those publications among various academic fields. I don't know, are you interested in corruption as an economist or as a political scientist?
As an
or as a
economist.
legal? Okay. Let's choose economics. And sometimes it's good to choose several fields. And if you're an economist, you
Social
also could be
sciences.
interested, yeah, I would also say possibly management.
Management as well.
Yeah, social sciences,
Business finance.
sociology, yeah, business.
That's it.
You can go here to refine. Unfortunately, there is something a little bit wrong with the system right now. It keeps just throwing me back to the starting page. But basically, what I wanted to show you, I'm the same algorithm which I used during this whole research. We can see the distribution of publication by various academic fields. And then you can also put additional filter on the publication date, on the country. You can actually compile and you can do the search corruption in Georgia and see what are the publications which have those keywords together. You can put corruption in Russia, corruption in Kazakhstan, corruption in China, and then this way you will find the relevant articles for all these topics. Let me try just one more time. Meanwhile, please ask more questions. I can type and try to answer. What I wanted also to tell you is about how we can save the information, because I think it will be very important for any work you do. Unfortunately, there is something going on here, with the computer.
It's fine.
It just keeps throwing me back. Do we do another browser here? I wonder if. Okay, one more try. Well, it's not the card, remember. Okay. Let me run a search. Let's say corruption. Let's say you're interested in corruption in China to do the comparative research. No, there is something.
There is no corruption in China.
Apparently. Well, technically speaking, what we see now is there are no publications on corruption in China. It doesn't say anything about corruption per se, just publications.
It's prohibited to publish about corruption.
Quite possibly. I would imagine we won't see much in corruption in North Korea either.
Yeah, that's correct.
If I understood it correctly, you had mentioned that if the author publishes an article in the subgroups, let's say, of the core database, then it would mean that this article would not get the H index, let's say, or this journal, that's what you have said, if I'm not mistaken, if I understood it correctly, that these journals, they either don't have the H index, or the chances of getting this H index is almost non-existent, or it is very low. So if this is really the case, then what's the future that you would envisage for the journals that are included in those subgroups or sub-databases?
Okay, I think I can hear two questions here. The first question is on the journals.
I think that was the wrong question. I didn't.
Yeah, if I understood it correctly, I
I
want to say right away that in the Web of Science core collection, there are different internal subgroups, but that doesn't really matter. If the journal is selected for inclusion in the core collection, it's in the core collection. We do monitor the journals pretty closely. So there are journals which are included in the database, and there are journals which are excluded from the database. Journals can be excluded for a variety of reasons, generally for failing certain standards, for irregularities. Very often journals are kicked from the database for attempts to manipulate citations, because there are some ways in which the editors try to inflate the number of citations for their journal. This business has been going on for quite a long time, so the ways in which citations can be inflated are well known. There are two basic ways in which it can be done, and we have special people in the editorial committee which monitor the journals for any irregularities in citation behavior. So those journals then are excluded from the database. So there are journals coming in and there are journals coming out. Now, the second question which I heard is about the indicators for the journals. Now, the main indicator for the journal, let me talk a little bit more about that now. The main indicator which is used for journal evaluations is the impact factor. Not the H index. The H index is a Hirsch index, and Hirsch index is used for evaluation of individual scholars or institutions. But when we talk about the journals, we talk about the impact factor. What is the impact factor? Impact factor is an average citation for a certain period of time, usually from a 2-year period. This is a formula based on which the impact factors are calculated. The most recent impact factors we have are the impact factors for the year 2013. What we do to calculate the impact factor of a journal for 2013? We need to find out how many articles were published in the journal in 2 previous years, in 2011 and 2012. And then, how many times those articles were cited in 2013. So we get the average citation of one article. This is the classic impact factor that was created by Eugene Garfield back in the 1970s. And those impact factors are all can be seen in the journal citation reports database, which is also you have in your access. Theoretically speaking, we can calculate impact factor for any period of time. There are 5 years impact factors. There is 1 year impact factor. But the classic impact factor is this one. It's 2-year impact factor. So if you see simply impact factor, then just somewhere it says just certain journal, solo annual journal has an impact factor, I don't know, of 10 or whatever. Then it means that it's a classic 2-year impact factor calculated on the basis of the Web of Science. Please know that if you see in international publications impact factor, that means the Web of Science data has been used. Because other databases have their own measures, not impact factors. They call it different. What else I can say on the impact factors?
So as far as I know, maybe I'm mistaken, but as far as I know, scholars of humanities quite often complain that the modern scientometric systems does not reflect the real situation, which is in the field. So is it the correct information? And if it is correct, then what are the main challenges that you are facing? And what are the ways that you envisage to overcome them? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very valid question. I would say it's almost a philosophical question. And replying to that, I would say that there are no metrics that can fully reflect the real life, so to speak. We can try to approach that, but what we always say is we believe that sometimes we think, although we are a major producer of the metrics in the world which are used for research evaluation, we believe that research evaluation can never be done based just on the metrics alone. That is always
well in case of
let me
sciences,
let me
sociology. That's what I say.
let me get to that point. So first thing, I just want to use this as an excuse to say that all metrics need to be used cautiously, and there should be an understanding how those metrics are being calculated. Having said that, original Web of Science database was designed for natural sciences. So the core of Garfield Science Citation Index were academic journals on physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics, some of the classic fundamental sciences. Then it was also spread to include other fields of study as well. Then Social Science Citation Index was added, then Arts and Humanities Citation Index was added, and then finally they all were merged into one single Web of Science. Prior to 1997, they existed as separate databases. Yes, Web of Science is generally a much better instrument to analyze natural science than it is to analyze social science and humanities. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true. Having said that, even if we talk about the social science and humanities, it's very important which field are we talking about. Let's say I am more familiar with economics, so I can say that in economics, let's say if we talk about econometrics or financial economics, those fields are fully globalized. So, and there, the Web of Science is extremely relevant. If we talk about the regional development economics, then the role of global journals is much less. So then maybe you also want to look at some other metrics.
None of them works, that's what they say, at least for the moment.
Yeah. If we look, let's say, at the psychology and behaviors, then actually for psychology, we have very good cases that show that international journals work. If we look at the humanities, let's say the art studies, that's perhaps the hardest, because most of the art studies journals exist only in the local languages. The role of global journals is less. So it varies from field to field. And I want here to say one more important thing that perhaps could be of practical significance, particularly for research evaluation. That all metrics for individual scholars and for the journals are valid only within the context of a certain research discipline. Sometimes I get questioned, I want to publish in such and such journal, it has an impact factor of 1. Is it good or bad? And the answer to this is following. It's good because it means that the journal is indexed in the Web of Science and has an impact factor above 0. That is good. So to that extent, yes, it's a good journal, it passed a certain basic selection. Beyond that, the absolute number of the impact factor doesn't tell you much. Because if it's a journal in medicine, journals in medicine have very high impact factors. So a medical journal with impact factor of 1 is actually below the average in the Web of Science. If it's a journal in applied physics, again, impact factor of 1 is below the average. For the journals, it's not really the average, it's the median that matters, the median of a certain discipline. If it's a journal in mathematics, it's a very good journal because the median impact factor in mathematics is 0.58. So journal with impact factor of 1 is almost twice above the average level for math. in geology is about the same. The earth sciences also have on average low impact factors. So we can analyze, we should analyze all the journals in the context of their subject fields. In history, the highest impact factor of the history journal in the world, which we have now, is approximately 1.65. That's the tops. So a journal with impact factor 1 in history, it's a great journal. It's a fantastic journal. It's one of the best.
What about the business, if you are aware of?
The business, I cannot give you the numbers from the top of my head. I can just say that business is one of the relatively better-sided fields in social and economic sciences. So, worse than applied physics, better than humanities.
And do we have the average of social science journals?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we can calculate that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm almost afraid of going back to the computer. But we can give it just one more try. Oh, here we are. Here we are in the journal citation report. That's fantastic. And by the way, this is no, not this. Something else. Journal citation reports right here. No, I don't want to get it off my screen. I just wanted to underline. So, journal citation reports. Let me find out the information about the journals on business. We can select here certain edition. And now let's see what are the subject categories. You are interested in business, right?
Business.
Okay, this is how the journal citation report looks like. What a journal citation report is, it's basically one huge table. In this table here we have scholarly journals on the left. And here we have the table with various data on the journals. And here we can sort this table. Let's sort this table by the impact factor. Here we have the list of journals on business. Here is the most cited journal on business in the world. This journal. Let's take a look. Academy of Management Review. I don't know if you know this specific journal, but so it's an American journal published in English. Here is its impact factor. And as you can see, in journal citation reports, you get not only the numbers, but you also have all the underlying data. These numbers have been calculated on the basis of. And here is the number of articles published. Here on the right side, you have the number of the articles published in journal citation reports in 2012, 2011. And here you have the number of citations in 2011 and 2012. So, here you have the impact factor. Now, if you are interested, let's say you are interested in the category as a whole. Here you have button View Category Data. This is the data now for the whole category, not for a single journal, but for the whole fields of business. This is the median impact factor in business. Yeah, 1.4, exactly. So
Which is not high.
well, I wouldn't, these are relative data, so I wouldn't even use such categories as high or low.
Well,
Really
comparing
what,
to
really what matters is how the journals compare one to another within the category. Yes, it's relatively low compared, say, to
other fields,
other fields, like say,
physics.
oncology. But it doesn't mean that those are bad journals. It doesn't mean that. It means in different fields we have different patterns of citation. And bottom line. Okay. Okay. Let me just show you. Let me just show you one more button here, the journal rank. Because this is, I would say, perhaps the most important part for journal evaluation. It's not the impact factor number, but it's this, it's journal ranking. Journal ranking shows which place a certain journal occupies in its subject field on the basis of its impact factor. For instance, this is actually to answer your question, the journal we are looking for in the, this is a very good example. This journal is assigned to two subject categories. To subject category business and to subject category management. In subject category business, we have 111 journals, and of those journals, the journal is number 1. In subject category management, there are almost 200 journals, and the journal is also number 1. Sometimes you can find a situation when in a certain field, a certain journal is ranked pretty high, and in the second category is ranked much lower. It happens, because again, we need to compare journals in the context of the subject field.
And the methodology for this ranking, what's it about?
Here it's very simple. It's simply impact factor.
Just impact factor.
Just by impact factor. We calculate the impact factor and then we see the spread of journals by the impact factor. One more thing I want to show to you. Right next to the journal's rank, you can see this little sign saying Q1. What this is. Imagine we have all journals in business. A list of journals ranked by their impact factor. The top quarter of the list have the highest impact factors, and that's the first quartile of the journals.
Divided in 4.
Divided in 4 quartiles. So, the first quartile are the journals with the highest impact factor. The lowest quartile are the journals with the lowest impact factor. So, if you look at the professional literature, at academic literature, you can sometimes see reference. Let's get more publications in Q1 journals. Now you know what it means. So, if you see those references, what is a Q1 journal? This is what it is. We look at the journals in a certain field, like business and management, and then the top first quarter of the journals are Q1 journals. The bottom quarter are the Q4 journals. By the way, it doesn't, sometimes people ask, well, does it mean that there are bad journals in the Q4 journals? But not necessarily. Those can be relatively small, highly specialized journals which simply don't attract that many citations as big, more universal journals. And if you are looking for publishing in the Web of Science journal, that could be a reasonable strategy for you. Is find your field of study and find some Q4 journals. Because usually Q4 journals are easier to get into and they publish faster. One of the biggest problems we have with most of the Q1 journals is not only that they are highly selective, it's very hard to get into those journals, but also it takes a long time to publish articles there, sometimes up to 2 years.
And what's the reason?
Because they can afford it. Because there are so many people who want to get their publications in the top journals that they can afford to be selective, they can afford to be not very nice with authors, because they have choice. If you look at the Nature, perhaps the most authoritative academic journal in the world today, Nature accepts less than 1% of all submissions to it. 99% of submissions to Nature are rejected. They can afford to do pretty much whatever they want.
You mentioned the manipulation of citations in 2 ways. How can we identify if citations are manipulated?
The Web of Science editorial committee will do that.
Yes, but how can you do that?
Well, sometimes, okay. How we do that? Let me back to this journal. You see there is a chart here. This chart here, there is a blue part of the bar and the yellow part of the bar. The yellow part of the bar is self-citations. Quite often, some very smart editors tell the authors, cite my journal and then I will publish you. Great. That really will increase the number of citations temporarily. It also will increase this yellow bar greatly. And when this yellow bar will reach 50% mark, I mean, again, varies from discipline to discipline, then the editorial committee will start doing some work on finding out what's going on here. So, what is that? There are others. There are basically statistical algorithms, pretty much. I can tell you this, that citation patterns are pretty conservative. And if we look at the group of the leading journals in every single field, this is a very conservative group. We don't see many changes in most of the fields unless we see a scientific revolution going on. Let's say emergence of the new field, say like nanotechnology, for example, or graphene study. Then you can sometimes see some change. So if there is a new journal with impact skyrocketing, it's a question mark. It's either a truly outstanding case or it's an attempt to manipulate. It's usually not that hard to find out.
Okay, so it's obvious we can't compare two impact factors from different fields. But what about, well, suppose the scenario that one article is published in a very influential journal and the other one is published in a marginal journal. So the one has very large audience, large reader, large number of readers, and the other has very few readers. So does the Web of Science show the difference between the two? If suppose that those two articles have the same impact factor.
Could I ask you which field you're specializing in? I'm sorry?
Psychology.
Okay, because I think you really should be in psychometrics. Because you asked one of the hardest questions in psychometrics today. You just hit it kind of on the nail. Okay, let me go back here to the information, to the database. This is precisely the big issue that, all metrics are based on certain number of simplifications, right? And definitely, there is a certain amount of simplification involved in the fact that we have one, I will use economic term, the cost of one citation from journal Nature equals to the cost of one citation from the small Q4 journal. In order to deal with that, we have created a special set of metrics called eigenfactors. This is the answer to your question. The eigenmetrics. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see. So here we have the journal citation reports. Here we have the traditional metrics, such as the impact factor. And by the way, here's the 5-year impact factor. And here we have eigenmetrics. What the eigenmetrics do, they also rank the journals, but they rank the journals taking into consideration what you just said. In eigenmetrics, eigenmetrics take into consideration the number of citations and the rank of the journal the citations come from. That's the advantage. There is a disadvantage. The algorithm for their calculation is very difficult. Let's say I'm no mathematician, so I wouldn't even dare to try to explain to you how exactly it's calculated. It's vector algebra. So it's a pretty sophisticated method of calculating this data. So we started providing this data about 5 years ago. And I say at the beginning there were many experts who believed that the eigenmetrics will substitute the impact factor, but that didn't happen. And happened for two reasons. First is because everyone now is impact factor simply has such a tradition of use that people are accustomed to using it. That's the first reason. And the second reason is because impact factor is easily verifiable. Anyone, a journal editor or a journal publisher, can easily verify himself the impact factor. With metrics, you can do it on your own. And the third thing is, if we run a correlation between the eigenfactor metrics and the impact factor, the correlation is pretty high. So, that's the answer. Now, there was one great question. I'm going back to your question about endnote.
Yes, that's not the question. I would like to hear a little bit more about it, because the moment I saw the last picture about the form of your entire paper and the biography was one click. The dedication of the Chicago 15th A and Chicago 15th B styles, that was something incredibly attractive to me.
See, unfortunately, I'm having to change my regular seminar a little bit because we're having some computer problems here. And plus we're pretty much running out of time. So let me just describe to you just verbally what endnote does. Let's suppose we do a certain search in Web of Science. Let's go back to our example of solar energy. Then at some point, you have a question of what are we going to do with the results of the search, right? You need to save them somehow. Let me show you how you can do that. First, you can mark the articles you are interested in, and then you can, there are several options how you can use them. You can print them, you can email them, or you can save them to several formats, including the special program EndNote. And I also want to show you quickly one more trick. If you do several searches, then you can select the articles you are interested in and put them in special temporary folder called marked list. For instance, in your case, if you're interested in corruption, in studying corruption in various countries, you can run a search on corruption in China. Actually, let me do that.
The system does generate all the necessary information according to the style indicated here, which could be implanted directly to the EndNote. That's the basic idea.
The basic idea is EndNote is your personal storage of references, and the program will allow you to format those references in according with the bibliographic style that the program contains. But let me just go back here. So we found, let's say, 400 articles on corruption in China. We choose 3 articles, and then we can save them to the marked list, which is a temporary storage. And here we have the values for the marked list, and here you have all the articles. Now, from here, you can save articles in various formats, including EndNote. See, unfortunately now I cannot show you the EndNote because in order to work with EndNote, I need to be in my profile. And system keeps kicking me from my profile. You all know by now my email address. The very last time. Maybe it will work at the end. And it's actually one of the reasons to work in your profile is because you can use information tools like EndNote. of the EndNote, it's a separate program. And there are two versions of it. There is a paid version. Paid version is the desktop version. And you can access it on the site endnote.com and put it on your computer. There is also a free version of the program EndNote, which can be accessible on the site myendnoteweb.com. I would suggest any of you who wants to work with the system to go to that website. Actually, maybe. Okay. Now in my profile, let's see if I can manage to connect to EndNote. No. So, and then as you said, the program will allow me to format the references. It's a very...
And do all the journals that are included into your database use one or another style that is indicated here? Because, for example, in France, they use the system which is different, and they simply say the citation note or paper, and there are some examples, and you have to do it yourself.
Well, each journal has its own format. So most of those formats are in the EndNote program. Not all of them, but most of them. See, there is something with security settings here that don't allow me to enter my profile.
While trying to collect the materials of corruption in China, we are facing to firewall, you know.
Probably. Right. I'm scared to think what would happen if I would type North Korea. The computer will probably just evaporate. So, but again, what the program EndNote does, it basically allows you to create your own little web of science. So you can get all the references you are interested in from the web of science. You can save them on the cloud. And then you can insert them in your own publications, in your own papers. And you can format them in accordance to certain bibliographic styles. So basically, it saves a huge amount of work because it's what I was trying very hard to show you how you press one button, and by clicking the button, your whole bibliography is formatted, say, in accordance to APA, American Psychological Association style. You click another button, and you reformat all the references to Chicago Medical style. So, it's very neat. And perhaps the best thing about it is that it's free. So, I see no reason why not using it. And when you work with Web of Science, then you have a link so you can move from Web of Science to EndNote directly. Here, on the top of the Web of Science, perhaps that's the last thing I want to show you, that, as I said, the Web of Science is a platform. So one thing that I was trying to demonstrate today, that we're not talking about the Web of Science just as a database. It's really a set of information tools which are all interconnected. So right here you can see journal citation reports and you can see EndNote. So you can move between those programs back and forth. Okay, now the very final thing I want to show you is our information site, workinfo.com. Oh, info, correct. And the name is derived from the old name for the Web of Knowledge platform. So this is our basic information site. Here we have training and support. If we go to training, here you can find the recorded videos for working with most of our information tools. So if you're interested in Web of Science core collection, you can go here. You want a quick tour on the Web of Science, you can go and do a quick tour on the Web of Science.
Video tutorials.
Yes. So, and with that, I want to wrap it up. Perhaps just one more thing. Of course, we use electronic resources, but sometimes it's much nicer to work with paper. Personally, whenever I'm really interested in something, I prefer to read materials on paper. There were many questions on psychometrics today. It's really a new field. It's a developing field. We need to be pretty careful when we use the metrics, particularly for the purpose of research evaluations. In many countries, I've already heard that there is no consensus about how to use metrics in Georgia. I can tell you, it's no surprise to me, there is no consensus about how to use them in Russia or in Kazakhstan or in many other countries. So recently we compiled the handbook, the Scientometric handbook, which is designed to serve as a manual on this field. Don't think it's in Russian, because we did it with some top Russian universities. But it provides a general coverage of this whole area. So I want to give one copy as a gift to your library.
Thank you.
And it was actually endorsed by Eugene Garfield himself. So I had a very lucky opportunity to present him with the content of this book and its content, and he believed that it's valid effort, so he even contributed an introduction to it. And there are much more, there's a much greater number of sources on the subject in English, so if you're interested in Scientometrics, actually in Europe it's usually called Scientometrics, in the US it's usually called bibliometrics. The terms are basically interchangeable, you can use either, and you can find plenty of information. Thank you very much, and I want to wish you very productive work.